I've made up my mind. I'll marry the Sinclair family's vegetable. Lisa Rutherford leaned against the doorframe of the Rutherford family's old mansion, her red lips curling into a mocking smile. Her father, James Rutherford, nearly dropped his cigar on the priceless Persian rug. He straightened up from his leather armchair, the wrinkles around his eyes smoothing out. Lisa, you've come around? Brilliant. The Sinclairs have been pressing us. You'll need to be married and move to Southside within a fortnight. What style of wedding dress would you like? I'll have one ordered for you. Is that all? Lisa sneered. I'm marrying in place of your beloved illegitimate daughter. And you're not going to show any appreciation? The temperature in the living room plummeted. James's face darkened. Watch your tongue. What illegitimate daughter? That's your sister. Sisters share the same mother. She chuckled coldly, her eyes icy. She's the product of your affair. I'll never acknowledge her as family. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. James's temple throbbed, but he swallowed his anger before it could erupt. He took a deep breath, ash falling from his cigar. What do you want? 10 billion pounds, her red lips parted. And once I'm married, transfer Victor Rowe to protect your precious illegitimate daughter. James's expression froze. He stared at his daughter as if she'd gone mad. Are you insane? 10 billion would drain all my liquid assets. And Victor Rowe, isn't he your favorite bodyguard? You used to throw tantrums about marrying him. And now you're getting married without taking him along? Just say whether you agree or not. Lisa grew impatient, turning to leave. Fine. James slammed his hand on the table. The day you marry and move to Southside, I'll sort out both matters immediately. He didn't have the energy to delve deeper, just wanting to settle things quickly. Years ago, when the Sinclair's only son was at the height of his success, he had rushed to arrange an engagement between the families, intending to marry Melody off to secure a good future for his younger daughter. Who could have foreseen that an accident would leave the Sinclair heir in a vegetative state? He couldn't bear to see Melody suffer. Which was when he remembered Lisa was his daughter too. She waved her hand dismissively, her high heels clicking on the marble floor, sharp as a slap to the face. As she gripped the door handle, James's voice came again. I understand you wanting money, but didn't you adore Victor Rowe? How can you bear to give him to Melody? Lisa's fingers froze on the handle. She didn't turn around, but her eyes suddenly burned. That name was like a thorn, piercing the softest part of her heart. She shoved the door open forcefully, leaving James and his question behind. It was late when she returned to the villa. Lisa climbed the stairs in her high heels. But as she passed Victor's room, she heard muffled gasps from inside. The door wasn't fully closed. She glanced up and saw the scene inside with painful clarity. Victor was half leaning against the headboard, a photograph between his long fingers, his other hand moving below. Eyes closed, his Adam's apple bobbing, his deep, sensual voice murmured, Melody, baby, good girl. It was a photo of Melody Rutherford. Taken at last year's birthday party, she wore a white dress, smiling innocently. Lisa's nails dug deep crescents into her Hermes bag strap, finally answering James's question in her heart. Because he's just like you, only interested in Melody Rutherford. This answer churned inside her, scorching her insides with pain. 3 years ago, she first met Victor on the day she was selecting bodyguards. Among the crowd of tall, muscular men, she'd zeroed in on him instantly. The reason was simple. He was ridiculously handsome. Standing at 6 feet 2 inches, broad-shouldered with a narrow waist, sharp features. Especially those pitch-black eyes, cold as ice. Lisa was known in their circles as a little temptress. She'd intended to just flirt with him for fun, but over 3 years. She'd pretended to be drunk and fallen into his arms, only for him to pick her up by the scruff of her neck like a cat and deposit her back on the sofa. She'd knocked on his door at midnight wearing a spaghetti-strap nightgown, only for him to wrap her entirely in his suit jacket and respectfully escort her back to her room. She'd even faked drowning in the pool. But when he jumped in to save her, he didn't so much as touch her waist. No matter how she flirted, he remained impervious to feminine charms. always addressing her formally as Miss, yet she'd fallen for him anyway. She didn't know how it had happened. Perhaps it was because, since her mother's death, she'd been so terribly lonely. When she was 7, James had an affair and brought home an illegitimate daughter. The girl was called Melody Rutherford, only 3 months younger than Lisa. It turned out that for 9 of the 10 years of his marriage, he'd been unfaithful. That day, her seemingly happy and peaceful family shattered completely. At the time, her mother was pregnant with James's second child, just days away from giving birth after carrying for 9 months. Her mother had loved James desperately. She questioned him hysterically, crying so hard she nearly fainted. That night, she went into premature labor and was rushed to the hospital. But before she could reach the operating theater, both she and the baby died. Since then, Lisa had hated James utterly, and hated Melody just as much. She'd moved out of the Rutherford mansion, going to school alone, eating alone, growing up alone, until she became so stunningly beautiful that the young rakes in their social circle harassed her too much. And she decided to hire a bodyguard. Victor was her first bodyguard. After that, she wasn't alone anymore. Victor accompanied her everywhere. Her feelings for him progressed from admiration to flirtation to genuine affection. But after 3 years, over 1,000 days and nights, he hadn't so much as batted an eyelash for her. She'd thought him naturally cold-hearted. Until that day when she caught him pleasuring himself to Melody's photo. And then overheard his phone conversation afterwards. "Mr. Rowe, how long are you going to play this bodyguard game? You're the crown prince of Northside, you could have any woman you want. If you fell for Melody Rutherford at first sight, why not just take her by force? Why be so pure, becoming her sister's bodyguard just to see her all the time?" Victor's expression remained cold. "I've looked into it. Melody's an illegitimate child, she's had a hard life and lacks a sense of security. Pursuing her rashly would scare her off. I want to take it slow." "Well, who'd have thought the Rowe family would produce such a romantic? I thought you might have fallen for that Miss Rutherford, always flirting with you. Let me tell you, she's known as the little temptress in our circles. Men who fancy her could queue from here to France." Victor seemed to chuckle, but his words plunged her into an icy abyss. "Is that so?" "Not interested. She can't compare to even a single strand of Melody's hair." Every word was like a knife, stabbing deep into Lisa's heart. In that moment, she stopped liking Victor Rowe too. Inside, the activity continued for an unusually long time. For some reason, today Victor was taking longer than usual to finish. Seeing this, she coldly curled her lip and violently pushed open the door. The moment Victor looked up, Lisa saw an unfathomable darkness in his eyes. Perhaps it was his nature as a man of power. But his expression remained unchanged even when caught in such a compromising position. With composure, he tucked the photo under his pillow. And his long fingers methodically smoothed down the alarming bulge in his trousers. In mere seconds, he had regained his usual aloof and ascetic demeanor. As if the man who had lost control moments ago was merely an illusion. Lisa couldn't help but smirk coldly. "Putting it away before you're finished? Won't that be uncomfortable? Do you need my help?" Victor's expression remained impassive as he leaned back slightly, creating distance between them. "Did you need something, Miss Rutherford?" He was always like this. He could become aroused by Melody's photo. Yet in Lisa's presence, he acted like a monk who had renounced all worldly desires. Lisa's nails dug into her palm as she thought of Melody's plain face. Despite having an inferior figure and looks compared to her, somehow everyone fell for Melody's act of innocence. No matter. She had beauty, money, and a killer body. From this day forward, she would have nothing to do with anyone who didn't fancy her. "There's an auction tomorrow. You're coming with me," she instructed coldly before turning to leave. Victor frowned slightly. "I remember requesting 2 days off." "I heard Melody will be there too," she said without looking back. There was a moment of silence behind her, followed by the man's deep response. "Understood, Miss Rutherford." Lisa felt as if a needle had pierced her heart. Indeed, he was willing to break any principle when it came to Melody. Don't worry. Soon, she would personally deliver him to Melody's side. The next morning, as Lisa walked out of the manor, She saw Victor already waiting by the car. His black suit accentuated his broad shoulders and narrow waist, while the morning light cast a golden edge on his stern profile. In the past, she would have deliberately teased him at times like this, either pretending to twist her ankle and falling into his arms, or whispering seductively in his ear. But today, she simply got into the car without expression, not even sparing him a glance. Victor seemed somewhat surprised, giving her an extra look, but quickly averted his gaze and silently took his seat in the passenger side. As the car drove towards the auction venue, Lisa stared out the window the entire time, not engaging in conversation as she usually would. The interior was so quiet they could hear each other's breathing. The auction was held at the most prestigious hotel in the city center. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the grand hall like daylight, filled with the who's who of high society. As soon as Lisa entered, she spotted Melody standing ahead, wearing a white dress with her long black hair cascading over her shoulders. She was chatting and laughing with several socialites, the picture of pure innocence. Victor's gaze immediately changed. Although he still stood behind Lisa fulfilling his duty as a bodyguard, she could feel that his attention had been completely captured by Melody. "Sis!" Melody exclaimed upon seeing them, quickly running over to affectionately link arms with Lisa. "What a coincidence, you're here for the auction too." Lisa coldly withdrew her arm. "Don't touch me." Melody's eyes immediately welled up with tears as she turned to Victor with a hurt expression. "Victor, I just wanted to be close to my sister." Victor's brow furrowed slightly, his gaze towards Lisa tinged with restrained disgust. Seizing the opportunity, Melody tugged on Victor's sleeve. "Victor, I heard that when I had a fever and craved red bean pudding, you braved the rain in the middle of the night to buy some and deliver it to the Rutherford house. I'm sorry I couldn't thank you earlier. My fever was quite severe, and I've been recovering these past few days." Victor's stern features instantly softened. "You're too kind, Miss Melody." "It was no trouble at all." "No trouble?" Lisa scoffed inwardly. That day he had disappeared for 5 hours and returned soaking wet. Was that what he called no trouble? "I still must treat you to a meal," Melody said sweetly. This time Victor didn't refuse. "I'll leave it to your arrangement, Miss Melody." "We should invite my sister too." Melody turned to Lisa, suddenly exclaiming in surprise. "Oh my, Lisa, you look so haggard." "And I'm the one who's been ill," Lisa coldly interrupted. "Since when are we so close?" "Daughter of a homewrecker, mind your own business." Melody's expression changed abruptly, and Victor's frown deepened even further. Just then, the auctioneer announced the start of the auction, finally breaking up the awkward conversation. Lisa couldn't be bothered with them anymore and took her seat. She was about to marry into the Sinclair family, and it would be unrealistic to expect her father to prepare a dowry for her. She needed to acquire these items herself, which was the real reason she had come to this auction. After being seated, the first item was presented. A pigeon blood ruby necklace with a starting bid of £1,000,000. She raised her paddle without hesitation. £2,000,000. To her surprise, Melody also raised her paddle, £3,000,000. Lisa looked at Melody, who smiled at her slightly. "Lisa, I like this piece too. You don't mind letting me have it, do you? After all, it seems father gives me more pocket money than you." Lisa smirked coldly. "More than me?" That was an understatement. From childhood, their father had given Melody £5,000,000 in monthly allowance, while Lisa only received £500. If it weren't for the inheritance her mother left behind, she might have starved long ago. But things were different now. She had £10 billion. For £1,000,000, Lisa raised her paddle again. Melody was visibly stunned but still gritted her teeth and raised the price, £4 500,000. £5,000,000. £5,500,000. After several rounds of bidding, Melody's expression grew increasingly unpleasant. "Lisa, where did you get so much money? Aren't you afraid you can't afford it?" £10,000,000. Lisa doubled the bid, then looked at her with a mocking smile. "I think you're the one who can't afford it now." Melody's face alternated between pale and flushed as the surrounding guests began to whisper amongst themselves. The auctioneer politely asked, "Miss Melody Rutherford, would you like to increase your bid?" "Just a moment." Melody hurriedly took out her phone to message her father. A moment later, her expression worsened, clearly having been refused. Seeing this, Lisa's lips curled into a smirk. Of course he would refuse. Having already given away 10 billion for me, he had no money left to save face for his precious daughter. In this awkward moment, a man in a suit suddenly appeared in the center of the hall, loudly announcing, "No limit bid." The entire room erupted in shock. "Sir, are you saying?" the auctioneer asked in surprise. The man explained, "I'm Mr. Rowe's assistant. He instructed that today, any item Miss Melody fancies should be bid on with a no-limit bid, to win the item at any cost." The auction hall instantly exploded with chatter. Mr. Rowe? The sole heir of the Rowe family? The famous Prince of Northside? Wasn't he known for avoiding women? Why would he make no-limit bids for Miss Melody? It seems Miss Melody is about to fly up the social ladder. The surrounding discussions rose and fell. Melody's face first showed shock, then turned to delight, and finally settled into poorly concealed pride. "May I ask where Mr. Rowe is? Could I thank him in person?" Melody asked, her face flushed. The assistant respectfully replied, "Mr. Rowe is unable to appear at the moment. When the time is right, he will naturally meet with you." Melody then turned to Lisa, her eyes full of victorious joy. "Lisa, are you still bidding?" A moment later, she added with feigned innocence, "Oh, I almost forgot, Mr. Rowe is helping me with no-limit bids. If you keep bidding, sister, I'm afraid you might go bankrupt. After all, who in this circle could be richer than Mr. Rowe?" Lisa's face changed abruptly. She quickly looked towards Victor, only to see him gazing at Melody with adoration, his eyes full of tenderness. The rest of the auction played out like a romantic drama. Whenever Melody so much as glanced at an item, the assistant immediately placed a no-limit bid. That ruby necklace, the tea set, even the Monet water lilies painting with a starting price of £8 million, all fell into Melody's possession. Lisa suddenly stood up, unable to contain her frustration any longer. She questioned the assistant. "Does your Mr. Rowe not intend to leave a single item for anyone else?" The assistant carefully glanced at Victor, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "I apologize, Miss Rutherford," the assistant replied coldly. "These are all gifts from Mr. Rowe to Miss Melody. He only wishes for Miss Melody to enjoy this auction. The feelings of others are not within his consideration." Lisa laughed, her nails digging deep into her palms. She looked towards Victor, but his gaze remained fixed on the triumphant Melody. "Victor Rowe, well done. You truly have outdone yourself." As the auction ended, Melody was surrounded by socialites and wealthy ladies, all fawning over her like stars around the moon. Lisa couldn't bear to watch this hypocritical scene any longer and quickly left the venue. As soon as she got in the car, she told the driver, to the nightclub. She needed alcohol to numb herself. But before the car door could close, Melody squeezed in. "Lisa, are you going to the club? I've been feeling so bored lately, please take me with you." Lisa was about to force her out when Victor smoothly held the car door open and said directly to the driver, "Drive." Throughout the journey, Melody excitedly discussed the day's auction. "Victor, why do you think Mr. Rowe is being so kind to me? We've never even met." Victor's voice was incredibly gentle. "Because he likes you." Melody's eyes widened instantly, her cheeks flushing. "Victor, don't joke around. Men understand men best," he said, his gaze intense as he looked at Melody. "Where the money goes, so does the love. Besides, Miss Melody is so wonderful, it's no surprise that he's fallen for you." "Then, do you like me too?" Melody suddenly asked. Victor was taken aback, about to speak when Lisa coldly interrupted. "If you two want to flirt, get out of my car." Melody's eyes immediately welled up with tears. "I'm sorry, Lisa. I didn't mean to disturb you. I'll be quiet now." Lisa couldn't be bothered with her and turned to look out the window. Through the car window's reflection, she clearly saw Victor's gaze towards Melody full of sympathy and tenderness, while his look towards herself was cold and disgusted. She smiled self-mockingly. It seems all men only like sweet talkers. The dim lights of the nightclub cast a hazy glow as Lisa tilted her head back, downing her third glass of whiskey. The alcohol burned her throat, but it couldn't extinguish the smoldering frustration in her heart. In the center of the dance floor, she swayed in her high heels, her red dress swirling around her. From the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Victor standing by the VIP booth. He was supposed to be her bodyguard, but now he was glued to Melody's side. Melody leaned in close to Victor, her lips almost brushing his earlobe as she whispered something. The man who was always cold as ice towards Lisa suddenly had a hint of red creeping up his ears. Lisa scoffed, turning away only to find herself surrounded by a group of young men. "Care for a drink, Miss Rutherford? Could I get your number? I've been dying to meet you, Miss Rutherford. Your beauty truly precedes you." She found herself cornered, unable to move or refuse. More men crowded around, and someone even dared to place a hand on her waist. "Victor," she finally called out in exasperation. The man seemed to notice her predicament only then, frowning as he made his way through the crowd. The muscles in his arms were visible beneath his black suit, and a single glance from him was enough to make the group of trust fund boys retreat sheepishly. "One might think you were her bodyguard," Lisa sneered, wiping away a splash of alcohol from her collarbone. Victor lowered his gaze. "I apologize. I didn't see earlier." "Didn't see?" She suddenly moved closer, her red lips almost grazing his chin. "Or didn't want to see?" As the girl's breath suddenly came closer, Victor's Adam's apple bobbed once, and he took half a step back. "You've had too much to drink, Mississippi. Don't worry, once I'm married off, you can protect Melody to your heart's content." Lisa's voice was drowned out by a sudden eruption of screams from the stage. Staff members were pushing out an iron cage containing 2 agitated adult Tibetan mastiffs. "Tonight's special event," the host shouted excitedly. "Storm versus Blaze. Place your bets now." Lisa frowned. The nightclub often featured these bloody fighting performances for betting, but she had always despised them. Just as she was about to leave, there was a sudden ominous creaking sound from the iron cage. The lock had come loose. Everything happened in an instant. The larger of the 2 mastiffs broke through the cage door, lunging straight for the nearest group of people. Amidst the screams, Lisa saw Victor turn without hesitation, almost instinctively rushing to Melody's side, enveloping her in his arms and pushing her towards the emergency exit. Lisa herself stood at the closest point to the mastiff, close enough to see the saliva dripping from its fangs. Ah! The pain came without warning. As the mastiff's sharp teeth pierced through the muscle of her calf, Lisa thought she heard the sound of fabric and flesh tearing together. A chunk of flesh was ripped away, blood gushing out. She collapsed to the ground, watching helplessly as the beast lunged at her again. Bang! The gunshot was deafening, and the mastiff fell to the ground. The last thing she saw was Victor's silhouette, gun raised, shielding Melody's back. As the ceiling began to spin and fade to black, the smell of antiseptic. When Lisa regained consciousness through the searing pain, the first thing she saw was the stark white ceiling. Her calf felt as if it had been branded with a hot iron, every breath pulling at the wound. She turned her head with difficulty, and the scene at the doorway of the hospital room dealt another blow to her barely conscious mind. Melody was buried in Victor's arms, sobbing. "Victor, you're Lisa's bodyguard. How could you protect me instead? It's all my fault. I shouldn't have come." The man's long fingers gently patted her back, his voice unbelievably gentle. "Miss Melody, you mustn't blame yourself. Even if I had to do it 100 times over." He paused, his fingertips wiping away the tears on the girl's face. "I would still choose to protect you first." "Why?" Melody looked up with tear-filled eyes. Victor gazed at her, his deep eyes filled with emotion. "Because I low." The sound of shattering glass interrupted Victor's unfinished sentence. Melody, startled like a frightened rabbit, suddenly sprang away from Victor's embrace. "Lisa, you're awake." She rushed to the hospital bed, tears welling up instantly. How do you feel? Are you still in pain? It's all my fault. Lisa's pale lips curved into a cold smile. Your presence here irritates me. How can I possibly feel better? Melody's tears fell even harder, her shoulders trembling slightly as if she had suffered a great injustice. She bit her lip, cast one last glance at Victor, and ran out of the room. Victor instinctively took a step to follow but stopped himself abruptly. He turned to look at Lisa, his voice low. Miss Rutherford, the situation was urgent at the time, I didn't react quickly enough. Lisa remained silent, turning her head to gaze out the window. She didn't want to hear it. For 3 whole days, Victor had stood guard outside the hospital room like a dutiful bodyguard, while she hadn't spoken a single word to him. Until the day of discharge. Lisa, stepping on her not yet fully healed leg, walked straight to the study. She pulled open the mahogany drawer and took out a shiny black leather whip. This was the Rutherford family's traditional disciplinary tool, capable of tearing flesh with a single lash. Go and call Victor, she said to the butler. When Victor entered the room, Lisa was meticulously polishing the whip. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a shadow beneath her eyelashes. Victor, you are my bodyguard, and you failed to protect me, she looked up at him. I'm going to punish you. You don't have any objections, do you? Victor stood rooted to the spot, his pupils contracting almost imperceptibly. Lisa saw it clearly. This Northside prince probably never imagined that one day someone would dare to use corporal punishment on him. Indeed, he was the renowned only son of the Rowe family. Usually, people couldn't wait to curry favor with him, who would dare to lay a finger on him? But now, she was actually going to whip him? Lisa stared at his expression and suddenly smiled. He was actually hesitating. He could have turned and left, he could have resigned, but he was hesitating? All for Melody? To stay by her side, to continue to get close to Melody? Her eyes burned, almost laughing to tears. Victor gritted his teeth and finally said in a low voice, no objections. At that moment, Lisa's heart clenched painfully. She gripped the whip tightly and suddenly raised her hand. No! A slender figure suddenly threw herself forward, firmly shielding Victor. Melody's eyes were brimming with tears, her voice trembling. Lisa, if you want to hit someone, hit me. It has nothing to do with Victor. Move aside, Lisa said coldly. I won't. Melody shook her head, crying pitifully. It's my fault you got hurt. If you want to punish someone, punish me. Victor reached out to pull her away. Miss Melody, this doesn't concern you. But Melody stubbornly stood in front of him, refusing to budge. Lisa watched the scene, her anger surging, and she suddenly lashed out with the whip. Crack! The sharp sound of the whip cutting through the air was piercing. She had aimed at Victor. But Melody had thrown herself forward, taking the lash meant for him. Ah! Melody cried out in pain, her slender body swaying before collapsing. Victor caught her, lowering his head to check her injuries. When he looked up again, Lisa met a pair of ice-cold eyes. In them was murderous intent, as if he would pounce on her and snap her neck the next second. She froze, feeling as if she had plunged into an icy abyss. Get out, she heard her own trembling voice say. Victor picked up the unconscious Melody and turned to leave. The study door slammed shut behind him with a deafening bang. Lisa stood there, realizing her hands were shaking so badly she could no longer hold the whip. 3 days later, Lisa went to try on wedding dresses alone. As night fell, she had just left the shop, when suddenly someone covered her mouth and nose from behind. A pungent medicinal smell invaded her nostrils. She struggled for a moment before quickly losing consciousness. When she woke up, everything was pitch black. Her eyes were blindfolded, and her hands were tied to a chair, unable to move. Crack! When the first lash came down, Lisa arched her back in pain. The rough rope dug deep into her wrists, and the blindfold made the darkness even thicker. She bit her lip until it bled to swallow her scream. You've offended someone you shouldn't have. The torturer's voice seemed to come from far away. Crack! 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 The whip fell like raindrops, each strike accompanied by a fierce whistling sound, tearing her skin open. She bit her lip hard, refusing to let out a scream. Who was it? Who would do this to her? The whipping continued for a long time until she became dizzy, and it finally stopped. Then, the sound of a phone being dialed came through. "Sir, I've done as you instructed," the man said respectfully. From the other end of the line came a familiar male voice. "Okay, send her back." Just one sentence. But Lisa's blood instantly froze. It was Victor. Victor had ordered someone to beat her. Just because she accidentally whipped Melody once. He had someone return 99 lashes to her? Pain and cold swept through her body, and she finally collapsed, passing out completely. At the hospital, Lisa lay face down on the hospital bed, the wounds on her back burning with pain. Outside the door, nurses were whispering. "That man is so handsome, he's so gentle with his girlfriend. Yeah, it's just a small whip mark, and he's so worried. Look at the one in room 304, covered in injuries and no one's come to see her." Lisa pulled out the IV needle and slowly made her way to the corridor. Leaning against the wall. Sure enough, at the door of the VIP ward, she saw Victor. He was carefully holding a glass of water, feeding Melody. Melody was pouting and mumbling something. And Victor wiped the water from the corner of her mouth with his fingertips. His eyes so tender they could melt. Lisa slowly leaned against the wall, her eyes moist. She didn't understand why, even though she had decided to let go. Her heart could still ache like this. As if someone was slowly carving at her flesh with a blunt knife. "Don't cry, Lisa Rutherford," she told herself. Because no one would care. On the day of her discharge, Lisa had just arrived when she heard familiar footsteps behind her. Victor had returned. Their eyes met, and they both saw something different in each other's gaze. They stood there in silence until Lisa's phone suddenly vibrated. And James Rutherford's name popped up. "Tomorrow is Melody's birthday party," James' voice was uncompromising. "She's been crying in front of me lately. Saying she wants to improve her relationship with you. Come and attend." Lisa sneered. "I won't go." "What are you angry about?" "This might be the last time." James emphasized, "The Sinclair family has already set a date, after you marry over." She hung up the phone directly and looked up at Victor standing in the shadows. "Do you think I should go?" The man's sharp profile looked particularly hard in the wall light. He was silent for a few seconds, his voice low. "You should go." "Fine," she tugged at the corner of her mouth, "then as you wish." The birthday party was set in the glass greenhouse of the Rutherford family's old mansion. When Lisa arrived wearing a dark green velvet gown, most of the guests had already arrived. Under the crystal chandelier, Melody wore a pink puffy dress, being the center of attention like a real princess. "Lisa!" Melody excitedly came over, making a gesture to hold her arm. Lisa avoided her, her gaze sweeping over the room full of gifts from James. A limited edition Hermes, Tiffany blue boxes, and the keys to a Porsche. "Melody has always been sensible since she was little. I love her the most," James said. James stood beside Melody with a loving face. Just like, many years ago, when he had stood beside her and her mother in the same way. She wore a little white dress, held high by her dad, while her mom smiled gently beside them. Now, everything had changed. After cutting the cake, the guests dispersed into small groups. Melody's best friend pulled her aside and whispered, "Melody, there are so many young gentlemen from prestigious families here today. Is Mr. Rutherford trying to arrange a match for you? But I heard you were already engaged to the Sinclair family?" Melody smiled, looking meaningfully at Lisa in the distance. "That's long been called off." "That's good. I heard that man has become a vegetable. Marrying him would be like being a widow," her friend winked. "Melody, with so many men here today, tell us quickly. What are your criteria for choosing a husband?" Amidst the crowd's teasing, Melody blushed and counted on her fingers. "First, he must love me deeply, enough to tattoo my name on his chest. Second, he must be brave. I heard there's a rare thorny rose that blooms once every 100 years on Moonlight Cliff. He must pick it for me. Third." Before she could finish, the doors to the ballroom suddenly burst open. "Mr. Rowe has come to deliver a gift," wishing Miss Melody a happy birthday and a joyous life. The assistant entered with a group of people in tow, carrying gifts of immeasurable value. A rare pink diamond necklace, an antique masterpiece painting, and even the deed to a private island. The entire room gasped. "Are these from Mr. Rowe? We've heard that at the previous auction, Mr. Rowe had someone bid no limit for Miss Melody. Now he's here personally with gifts. It seems Miss Melody is about to rise to great heights." Whispers and murmurs filled the air, with many stealing glances at Lisa, their eyes filled with pity. Despite her superior beauty and more prestigious background, everyone now believed she had lost. Lisa set down her champagne glass and turned towards the balcony. The night breeze was cool. She had just taken a deep breath when Melody's voice came from behind. "Lisa, why are you here all alone?" Away from the guests and their father, Melody finally dropped her facade. "Do you know? Dad told me you're to marry that vegetable," she said with a sweet yet venomous smile. "How pitiful. Your mother couldn't compete with mine back then. And now you can't compete with me either." Lisa whirled around. "Say that again?" I said. Melody leaned in, her red lips spitting out words like a viper. "Your mother deserved to die in childbirth, she..." Smack! A crisp slap rang out. But it wasn't Lisa who had struck. Melody had slapped herself. In the next moment, her tears flowed on cue. She staggered back a few steps, conveniently falling into the arms of Victor, who had hurried over. "It's not Lisa's fault," Melody sobbed, covering her face. "I angered her." Just then, James and the guests rushed over, their accusing glares piercing Lisa like arrows. "Lisa Rutherford!" James bellowed, "Have you no manners at all?" The guests' whispers cut like knives. "How cruel, on Miss Melody's birthday of all days." "Well, she lost her mother early. Raised without a mother's love, no wonder she's so narrow-minded." Lisa looked at this carefully orchestrated scene and suddenly laughed. She strode forward and, in front of everyone, slapped Melody hard across the face. "Look closely," she said, smashing her champagne glass. The glass shards reflected countless shocked faces. "This is my slap." As she turned to leave, she saw Victor holding Melody's shoulders, his eyes cold as ice. In the garden path. Lisa had just reached the corner when her wrist was seized in an iron grip. Victor's strength was alarming. She felt as if her bones might shatter. "Miss Rutherford." His voice was low, filled with suppressed anger. "What?" She looked up mockingly. "I slapped her once. Are you going to return 99 slaps?" Victor's pupils contracted slightly. What did she mean by that? Could she possibly know about last time? Impossible, he had been discreet. "Miss Rutherford," he loosened his grip slightly, brows furrowed. "You have everything. Why do you still bully Miss Melody?" "I have everything?" Lisa suddenly laughed, a harsh sound like crying. "What do I have? The moment she arrived, she caused my mother to die in childbirth, 2 lives lost. Once she moved in, she took my room, my toys, my pocket money, my father. Even my chance to study abroad, everything." This was the first time Victor had heard her say so much. In the moonlight, Lisa's eyes, usually filled with mockery, were brimming with tears she stubbornly refused to let fall. "I've heard," Victor's voice was hard, "that Miss Melody is the one who's had it rough." Lisa yanked her hand away, turning to leave. "Believe what you want." As she was about to get into her car, Victor spoke again. "Miss Rutherford, I'd like to request a few days off." "Do as you please," she said, closing the car door without looking back. After the black sedan had driven a distance, she suddenly told the driver, "Turn around." Back near the Rutherford house, she indeed saw Victor getting into a Rolls-Royce. Lisa had the driver follow at a distance, finally stopping outside a high-end tattoo parlor. Through the glass window, she saw Victor unbutton his shirt, revealing his muscular chest. The tattoo artist asked something, and he pointed to a spot over his heart. Mouthing one word, from his lip movements, it was clearly Melody. The assistant tried to dissuade him. "Mr. Rowe, your father will be furious if he finds out." "Do it," he said firmly. The tattoo machine buzzed, each needle feeling like it was piercing Lisa's heart. 2 hours later, Victor emerged, clutching his bleeding chest. His face was pale, but he insisted on getting in the car. To Moonlight Cliff, he told the driver. That's too dangerous. You've just had a tattoo. Now, Victor cut him off. Sitting in the car, Lisa suddenly remembered Melody's criteria for a partner. The kind who would tattoo my name on his chest. There's a flower on Moonlight Cliff, he must pick it for me. She smiled, and as she did, tears began to fall. Let's go, she told the driver. We're not following them. That night, she saw Melody's WhatsApp status. A photo of a thorny rose blooming on the cliff, with the caption, "Someone climbed mountains and crossed valleys just to pick a flower for me." At 3 a.m., Victor returned. Covered in blood, his right hand broken, but with a faint smile on his lips. The next day, as Lisa was about to leave, Victor came out of his room. He was pale, his right arm bandaged, his shirt collar slightly open. "Miss Rutherford," his voice was hoarse. "I had a bit of a car accident last night. I need to rest for a few more days, so I can't protect you for now." Car accident? It was clearly from climbing the cliff. But she didn't expose his lie, just gave a soft and walked out. Today was the day she'd say goodbye to her friends. At the nightclub, in a VIP room. "Come on, let's drink till we drop." Zelda Stone threw an arm around Lisa's shoulders. "Our Lisa is about to get married and become Mrs. Sinclair. We need to celebrate properly." The room was full of her closest friends from over the years. The champagne tower sparkled under the lights. The music was deafening, but Lisa felt oddly quiet. "I say, a husband in a coma is perfect." Zelda slurred, swaying her glass. "Rich, handsome, and no need to wait on him. It's the ideal marriage." "Exactly," another friend chimed in. "And all of the Sinclair family's assets will be yours." Lisa chuckled, her finger tracing the rim of her glass. "Once I'm married, I'll have to behave. Got to save some face for the Sinclair family." Everyone froze, then quickly backtracked. "Mr. Sinclair will definitely wake up. You're so beautiful, how could he bear to sleep forever?" "That's right. Our Lisa is the most beautiful in our circle, how could she possibly be a widow?" Lisa smiled as she listened to their chatter, drinking one glass after another. As they said their final goodbyes, Zelda suddenly hugged her, her voice choked up. "Your dad is such a bastard, and that Melody, do you want us to teach her a lesson?" "No need," Lisa patted her back. "Once I'm gone, none of this will matter to me anymore." She hugged each of them in turn until everyone's eyes were red-rimmed. After settling the bill, Lisa passed by the next room and heard a familiar voice. "Was that flower really so hard to pick?" "You bet. Moonlight Cliff is a place even professional climbers don't dare to go easily." Through the half-open door, Lisa saw Melody playing with the thorny rose, while her friend gossiped excitedly. "And he still risked his life to pick it. When he brought the flower yesterday, I think I saw your name tattooed on his chest. He's really serious about pursuing you, isn't he? He's just a bodyguard, how dare he? I'm the one the Rowe family's heir has his eye on now." She stroked the damaged petals of the rose. "Though Victor is quite handsome. He might make a decent lover occasionally." Her friend's eyes widened. "Aren't you afraid he'll hear? So what if he does?" Melody said dismissively. "Men are easy. Give them a little sweetness, and they'll be devoted." Lisa stood in the shadowy corner, suddenly curious about Victor's expression if he heard these words. How would that high and mighty Mr. Rowe react if he knew he was being treated as a backup plan? "Victor Rowe, this is the person you're desperately in love with." She smiled sarcastically and left without disturbing those inside. After leaving the nightclub, she went straight to the cemetery. Lisa knelt before her mother's gravestone, gently wiping dust from the photograph. "Mom, I'm getting married. To the Sinclair family's comatose son. It's fine, at least he won't cheat." The wind rustled the white chrysanthemums in front of the tombstone, like a silent response. "Don't worry, I won't be like you," her fingertips traced the cold stone. "Loving someone so much you'd give up your life. That's too foolish. I'll live this life well, very well indeed." As dusk fell, Lisa stood up, took a final look at her mother's photo, and left. Back home, Lisa spent the entire night packing. Clothes, jewelry, photo albums. She sorted through everything, preparing never to return. As dawn broke, her phone vibrated. Account credited, £10 billion. Immediately after, James Rutherford called. The Sinclairs are pressing. You must leave today. I've given you the 10 billion. As for Victor Rowe, I'll send him to the Rutherford mansion, Lisa interrupted. From today, he's Melody's bodyguard. I don't want him anymore. There was a moment of silence on the other end, then James suddenly softened his tone. Lisa, darling, I've always loved you and your mother. I used to think you were just morally bankrupt, Lisa laughed. Now I realize you're truly disgusting. She hung up and blocked the number. Outside, the moving company's van had arrived. As Lisa directed the workers to load her luggage, Victor emerged from his room. Miss, what's this? He frowned at the boxes strewn about. Moving, Lisa said without looking up. To a new place. Victor nodded, seemingly not thinking much of it. And certainly not realizing that her moving meant from north side to south side. Let me help you. No need, she finally looked at him. You have another task. What's that? Go buy some roasted chestnuts now and deliver them to the Rutherford mansion, for Melody. Victor was visibly taken aback. Why? You'll see when you get there. She saw his Adam's apple bob, a flicker of emotion in his usually cold eyes. But in the end, the desire to see Melody won over his doubts. Victor remembered something else. Miss Rutherford, send me your new address after you move. I'll clean up and come over later. A 24-hour personal bodyguard, living and dining with her, ensuring her safety at all times. That was the contract they had signed. But this time, Lisa didn't answer. He waited a while, and seeing she really wasn't going to respond, he thought perhaps she'd send it later and turned to leave. As he reached the main door, he vaguely heard her say something. Pardon? He looked back. Lisa stood in the morning light, saying softly, nothing. Go on. Only after his figure had completely disappeared did Lisa get into the car and tell the driver. To the airport. As the scenery rushed past the car window, she took out her phone, removed the SIM card, and snapped it in half. Crack. The card broke into 2 pieces, which she casually tossed out the window. And then, they vanished completely. Victor stood before the wrought iron gates of the Rutherford family estate. A bag of freshly roasted chestnuts in his hand. The paper bag was slightly softened by the warmth. And the sweet aroma wafted around him. He pressed his hand to his chest, where Melody's name was tattooed. The needle marks were still fresh, causing a dull ache. But stranger still was the rapid beating of his heart. As if something was tugging at his nerves, making it impossible for him to remain calm. He furrowed his brow, attributing this odd sensation to the joy of seeing Melody soon. As he pushed open the gate, he saw James Rutherford standing in the center of the living room. His face resigned as he tried to reason with someone. Melody had her back to Victor, her shoulders trembling slightly as she spoke with anger in her voice. 10 billion pounds? Dad, have you gone mad? James lowered his voice. We must keep our options open. My dear daughter, I have no choice. I can't go back on my word to the Sinclair family. I have to choose one of you to marry into their family. I don't want you to get involved in this mess, so I can only choose Lisa. But this is her condition. Think about it, would you rather marry into their family or take the 10 billion? Melody bit her lip, and after a long moment, she reluctantly spoke. Of course I won't marry into their family. He's in a vegetative state, it would be like being a widow. Besides, I've caught the eye of the Rowe family heir now. Halfway through her sentence, she caught sight of Victor from the corner of her eye. Her expression immediately changed, and as she turned, she put on a sweet smile. Victor, you're here? Victor hadn't clearly heard their previous conversation. He simply responded with a gentle and handed over the chestnuts. Eat them while they're hot. Melody took them, deliberately brushing her fingertips against his palm. Her eyes crinkling as she smiled, they're still warm. Victor looked at her, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. "I'm glad you like them, Miss Melody." He should have been happy, but for some reason, that strange feeling in his heart grew stronger, as if something was quietly slipping out of control. He paused, then said, "Now that I've delivered them, I should be going." Melody quickly grabbed his sleeve. "You don't need to leave." Victor froze. "What do you mean?" Melody blinked, feigning innocence. "Didn't Lisa tell you?" "She's given you to me." Victor's mind went blank. What did she mean by given? Seeing his confused expression, Melody quickly added, embellishing the story. "Lisa has agreed to marry the Sinclair's son who's in a vegetative state for that 10 billion. She left for Southside early this morning. From now on, you'll be my bodyguard." Victor's breath caught sharply. Marriage? To Kyle Sinclair? The former Sinclair heir, who was once as famous as him, is now lying in a hospital bed, unresponsive? He suddenly remembered Lisa mentioning moving this morning. So it wasn't just a normal move, but marriage to Southside? His mind involuntarily drifted to the first time he met Lisa. 3 years ago, when the Rutherford family was selecting bodyguards. He had applied because he was interested in the younger daughter, Melody. He hadn't expected that the one choosing the bodyguards would be the elder daughter, Lisa. He had intended to leave immediately, but was unexpectedly chosen. The sun had been bright that day. She had walked down the spiral staircase in a red spaghetti-strap dress, her high heels clicking on the marble floor like a musical instrument. "I'll take him," she had said, pointing at him, her red lips curving into a smile. "He's handsome." Later, he learned that the elder Miss Rutherford was known in their circles as a minx, changing boyfriends more often than she changed clothes. She was passionate and flamboyant, like an unquenchable fire. He had stayed on, telling himself it was a way to get closer to Melody. After all, they were sisters. Later, she had repeatedly tried to flirt with him, but her attempts were adorably clumsy, pretending to twist her ankle and falling into his arms, only to sneeze repeatedly because she'd used too much perfume, knocking on his door in the middle of the night wearing a sexy nightgown, but getting so nervous she asked, "Do you want to come in?" instead of "Do you want to do it?" Even pretending to drown in the swimming pool, only for him to discover when he jumped in to save her that she couldn't swim at all, and nearly drowned herself for real. Victor's Adam's apple bobbed. Someone as proud as her, would she really marry for a 10 billion? And to a man in a vegetative state? Victor's heart suddenly clenched painfully, as if pierced by something sharp. Seeing him lost in thought, Melody tugged at his sleeve petulantly. "Victor, don't you want to stay by my side and protect me?" Victor snapped back to reality, suppressing the tumultuous emotions in his heart, and said softly, "Of course I do." He heard himself say, "It would be my honor to protect you, Miss Melody." But why, as he said these words, was his mind filled with the last look Lisa had given him? Calm, indifferent, as if looking at a stranger. "Wonderful!" Melody exclaimed, affectionately linking her arm with his. "Let's go shopping right now." "I want to buy a new dress." Victor mechanically followed her out. Isn't this what he had always wanted? To be able to openly protect Melody, without having to use his position as Lisa's bodyguard to watch her from afar. As for Lisa, she had always bullied Melody since they were young. It was probably for the best that she was gone now. At least no one would hurt Melody anymore. Victor's devotion to Melody had reached a level that was almost universally infuriating. As her bodyguard, he accompanied Melody shopping, dining, and to the cinema. When she casually mentioned craving pastries from an old bakery in the West End, he personally queued at 3 a.m. to buy them. When her feet ached from shopping, he would kneel down to massage her ankles, completely disregarding the astonished stares of passers-by. As the heir to the Rowe family fortune, when Melody expressed interest in a new collection from a high-end jeweler, he secretly bought the entire series and presented it to her. When she said she liked stars, he purchased a whole patch of night sky and named it after her. If she expressed dislike for someone, that person would mysteriously vanish from their social circle the very next day. The lads in their circle all said that the Rowe family's golden boy had fallen hard for the Rutherfords' younger daughter. They weren't wrong. One day, Melody insisted on going to the countryside to watch the sunset. On their way back, a lorry lost control and headed straight for their car. In a split second, Victor sharply turned the steering wheel, moving the passenger side away from the point of impact, then shielded Melody with his body. Bang! The car rolled twice upon impact, glass shattering and airbags deploying. Victor's back slammed hard against the car door, sharp metal fragments piercing his flesh. Blood instantly soaked through his shirt. Yet his arms remained steady, protecting the person in his embrace, ensuring she wasn't hurt at all. "Victor!" Melody cried out, her face ashen as she tremblingly touched his bloodied face. You're bleeding." Victor wanted to comfort her, but as soon as he opened his mouth, he coughed up blood. Before he lost consciousness, all he heard was her devastated sobs. When he next awoke, he saw the stark white ceiling of a hospital room. Melody had been dozing by his bedside, and immediately threw herself at him upon hearing movement. "You scared me to death. Why are you so foolish?" She accidentally pressed on his wound, causing Victor to groan in pain, but he still raised his hand to gently stroke her back. "It's all right, doesn't hurt," Melody cried, her face streaked with tears. "The doctor said if the metal had gone in just an inch deeper, it would have pierced your heart." He remained gentle. "Don't cry, it's my duty. You're too good to me." Melody looked up with teary eyes. "You're supposed to be my sister's bodyguard, but all these years you've been secretly taking care of me. Remember when I had a fever? You ran all over town in the pouring rain to buy me red bean pudding. That day, it had been raining cats and dogs. He had searched for 5 hours, returning soaked to the bone, but still delivered the warm pudding to the Rutherford residence. And last year on my birthday, when I casually mentioned wanting that limited edition necklace, you went and participated in that dangerous car race. What touched me most was that flower from Moonlight Cliff. Such a dangerous place, you risked your life to pick a flower for me. So..." Melody looked at him expectantly. "Why are you so good to me?" "Because..." He opened his mouth, but the words "I like you" got stuck in his throat. It was strange. He had taken a hit from a car for her, picked flowers for her, even gotten a tattoo for her. But when it came to actually saying it out loud, his heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, making it hard to breathe. "Are you free in 3 days?" He finally changed the subject. "I have something I want to tell you." Melody's eyes lit up. "What is it?" "You'll find out then." He managed a smile. Melody was about to press further when her phone suddenly rang. She glanced at the caller ID, her expression instantly becoming flustered. "Victor, I've got to go. Something's come up." Before Victor could respond, she had already grabbed her bag and rushed out of the hospital room. As the door closed, Victor's smile faded. He stared at the ceiling, suddenly remembering an incident from 6 months ago. Back then, he was still Lisa's bodyguard, and during a business event, they were attacked. To protect her, his shoulder was slashed by a weapon, leaving a wound so deep the bone was visible. "Victor, are you out of your bloody mind?" Lisa had exploded on the spot, red-eyed as she berated him. "Who told you to shield me? Who told you to do that?" She cursed at him while frantically trying to stop his bleeding, completely oblivious to her expensive gown being soaked in blood. Later at the hospital, this young lady, who had never lifted a finger in her life, insisted on taking care of him personally. The porridge she made was thick enough to use as mortar, and when she peeled an apple, half the fruit ended up as waste. Yet she stubbornly refused to let the nurses help. "You're my bodyguard, true," she had said then, her eyes red. "But while my life is important, so is yours." Recalling this, Victor's lips unconsciously curved into a smile. The next second, he froze. What was he doing? Lisa was married now, and he liked Melody. Why was he thinking about these irrelevant things? As if to prove something, he grabbed his phone and dialed his old friend Chris Miller. Well, the young Mr. Rowe finally remembers his mate. A teasing voice came from the other end of the line. "Heard you nearly sacrificed yourself for love, blocking a car?" Victor got straight to the point. "Help me prepare a confession scene." "What?" Chris nearly fell off his chair. You're going to confess to Melody Rutherford? Finally done with the secret admirer act? Victor listed a series of requirements. I want a rose garden, a symphony orchestra, a drone show. And prepare a pink diamond necklace. Chris whistled in amazement. You're spending billions on just a confession? Won't you spoil her rotten in the future? I really don't get it. What's so special about Melody Rutherford that you like her this much? This question sent Victor into a reverie. 3 years ago, at that charity gala, he saw Melody for the first time. She was wearing a white dress, climbing a tree without a care for her image to save a bird's nest that was about to fall. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling her figure. Her face wasn't clear, but the scene was as beautiful as a painting. He had taken a phone call, and by the time he returned to help her, she had already successfully saved the nest and left. He asked a waiter who she was, and the reply was Miss Rutherford. It was that moment of attraction that made him decide to get close to her. He even concealed his identity to become Lisa's bodyguard, just so he could see Melody often. She's kind, pure. Victor mechanically listed Melody's virtues, but the more he spoke, the more unfamiliar it felt. Anyway, just get everything ready. This time, I'll definitely get Melody to say yes. With that, he hung up the phone. Victor's wounds had not yet healed, and the doctor repeatedly advised him to rest. But he insisted on leaving the hospital early. He spent billions of pounds to set up a romantic scene at Rose Manor, the most luxurious estate in Northside. The manor was filled with Juliet roses flown in from France, each handpicked by him. The playlist for the band was personally finalized after 3 sleepless nights. The fireworks were customized according to Melody's preferences, designed to form a starry sky pattern that would spell out her name at the most romantic moment. He even personally tasted all the dishes, and meticulously selected the vintage of the champagne. Seeing him like this, his best friend Chris couldn't help but tease. Mr. Rowe, one might think you're preparing for a coronation. Victor ignored him, only checking his watch. There was still half an hour until the appointed time. However, half an hour passed, then an hour. Melody never showed up. Victor stood on the rose-covered terrace, his fingers unconsciously fiddling with the diamond ring in his pocket. He called Melody countless times, but all went unanswered. Could something have happened? His brow furrowed as he immediately contacted his staff. Check Melody's schedule for today. 10 minutes later, the news came. Miss Melody is at the Rhine Beauty Clinic. She's had a full-body spa, manicure, and an appointment with a hairstylist. She's been there for 6 hours. Victor froze. She was at a beauty salon? Had she forgotten the time? But he had specifically reminded her yesterday. He gripped his phone tightly and drove straight there. The Rhine Beauty Clinic was a top VIP establishment. The security guard at the entrance tried to stop him. Sir, please show your membership. Get out of the way. The manager rushed over, slapping the guard's hand away. Are you blind? This is Mr. Rowe. Victor strode towards the top-floor suite with a cold face. But just before pushing the door open, he heard laughter from inside. You're really not going to that bodyguard's date? Her friend's voice was teasing. Melody lazily hummed, Why would I go? Just by the look in his eyes, I knew he was going to confess. How could I possibly marry a bodyguard? But he's so good to you, her friend teased. Taking a bullet for you, picking flowers for you. He even tattooed your name on his chest. So what? Melody scoffed. No matter how handsome he is or how good he is to me, he's just a doorman. I'm now the one the Rowe heir has his eye on. Of course I need to seize the opportunity to marry into a wealthy family. Victor's hand froze on the doorknob. Her friend asked again. Then why don't you just reject him outright? It's cruel to string him along. What do you know? Melody's voice was full of pride. He's handsome, strong, and willing to risk his life for me. What's wrong with having one more simp? Most importantly, she suddenly lowered her voice, laughing maliciously. Lisa likes him, but he likes me. Just thinking about her face when her beloved is taken away makes me so happy. It's like when she used to love wearing white dresses. But I said I liked them, and Dad gave me all her white dresses. I wore them in front of her every day until she never loved white dresses again. Victor felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. Her friend seemed interested. Come to think of it, you've been sabotaging Lisa for years, right? I heard about what happened when her mom was in labor. That woman deserved it. Melody's tone suddenly turned sharp. Who told her mom to cling to the position of Mrs. Rutherford? I just happened to put some abortion pills in her water before she gave birth. Who knew she was so weak that both she and the baby died? And Lisa's overseas study opportunity being cancelled. Was that because you reported her for academic fraud? Just a forged report letter. Melody said lightly. That idiot threw a big tantrum at home when I framed her, but it was useless. Dad only listens to me. Every word was like a poison knife, shredding Victor's memory of that pure girl who saved the bird's nest. The manager asked nervously, Mr. Rowe, do you want to go in? The room suddenly went quiet for a moment, then came Melody's wary voice. Who's outside? Victor closed his eyes and turned away. Don't tell her I was here. In the black Maybach, Victor chain-smoked. He recalled what Melody had just said. She looked down on him as a doorman, only wanting to marry into a wealthy family. She had given abortion pills to Lisa's mother who was 10 months pregnant, causing both mother and child to die. She had reported Lisa for academic fraud, causing her to lose her opportunity to study abroad. Through the smoke, he remembered Lisa's eyes, always filled with contempt. Her gritted teeth when she called him an idiot. Her trembling fingers when she bandaged him. Her words, Victor, I don't want you anymore, before she slammed the door. All these years, the person he had cherished turned out to be so despicable. And Lisa, whom he had treated coldly time and time again, was the real victim. The cigarette burned his fingertips, but he didn't notice. In the distance, the fireworks at Rose Manor rose into the sky on schedule, exploding into a brilliant Melody Rutherford. But the man who should have been gazing at the fireworks was now just smoking one cigarette after another, his heart aching. He didn't know how that once kind-hearted girl had become so detestable. Bang! His fist slammed onto the steering wheel. He finally understood that he had always been in love with an illusion. That girl who saved the bird's nest never existed. Or rather, that person was never Melody Rutherford. His memory suddenly flashed back to that gala 3 years ago. Sunlight, white dress, the girl in the tree. Wait. Melody's words suddenly echoed in his mind. It's like when she used to love wearing white dresses. But I said I liked them, and Dad gave me all her white dresses. I wore them in front of her every day until she never loved white dresses again. At that time, he had asked the waiter who that girl was. The waiter had only said she was a Miss Rutherford. Later, when he finally had time to search for her after finishing a company project abroad, he learned that the Rutherford family had 2 girls. One wild and unrestrained, the minx of the social circle who loved to wear red dresses. And one as pure as Jasmine, who loved to wear white dresses. He had subconsciously assumed that Miss Rutherford meant the second Miss Rutherford. But now it seemed. Victor's blood froze instantly. With trembling hands, he dialed Chris' number. Help me check the CCTV footage of the back garden from that charity gala 3 years ago. He understood that 3 years had passed, and finding any information would undoubtedly take some time. But as each second ticked by, his heart raced uncontrollably. His eyes were fixed on his mobile screen, not blinking, while the ashtray beside him overflowed with cigarette butts, betraying his agitation. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. He answered almost instantly, "Have you found anything?" However, it was the butler's respectful voice that came through. "Master Victor, the old master requests your immediate presence at the family estate." Victor frowned. Is grandfather unwell? The old master didn't say, "Sir," but his tone was urgent. He ended the call and started the engine. The Rowe family estate was ablaze with lights. As soon as Victor stepped into the living room, a stack of photographs flew at him, scattering all over the floor as they hit him. "Look at the kind of woman you've been chasing all these years." The old man leaned on his cane, his face ashen with anger. The heir to the Rowe fortune, working as a bodyguard, all for this sort of woman? Victor bent down to pick up the photos, his pupils constricting sharply. In the pictures, Melody was wearing a provocative short dress, nestling against different men. Some were wealthy businessmen in their 50s, others were notorious playboys. The most jarring image showed her on tiptoes, kissing the cheek of a married business tycoon, her eyes full of calculation. Did you think she was some pure, innocent flower? The old man sneered. The Rutherford family's meager fortune doesn't even get them through the door in high society. This woman would do anything to climb the social ladder. Victor clenched the photos, his knuckles turning white. He suddenly recalled the conversation he'd overheard at the Rhine Beauty Clinic earlier that day. He'd thought that was the worst of it. But she had managed to surprise him yet again. "Grandfather, I..." Just as he was about to speak, the butler hurried in. "Master Victor, Miss Melody Rutherford has sent an invitation. She says tomorrow is your birthday and would like to bring a gift in person." Victor was taken aback. Tomorrow was indeed his birthday. He had originally planned to announce Melody's status to everyone at his birthday celebration. After a successful proposal, to tell everyone that she was the one for him. But now, the old master slammed his hand down. "Absolutely not. Let her come," Victor suddenly said, his voice as cold as ice. "And invite Mr. Rutherford as well." As the butler was about to leave, Victor called after him. "Look into how Lisa Rutherford has been treated by the Rutherford family over the years." The old man narrowed his eyes. "What are you planning now?" "There are some things I need to confirm." Victor looked up, his eyes stormy with emotion. "Grandfather, give me one more day. I promise I'll give you a satisfactory answer." The old man grunted, leaving the room with his cane, but not before throwing back. "Remember, the Rowe family will never accept such a woman." Night had fallen. Victor stood in his study, looking at the thick stack of documents the butler had brought. The manila envelope was light, yet it felt as heavy as lead. He took a deep breath and untied the string. With each page he turned, it felt like a knife was slicing through his heart. The first page was Lisa's medical record from when she was 7. Stress-induced mutism, lasting 3 months. Beside it was a psychologist's note. Patient witnessed mother's death during childbirth, severely traumatized. Father brought home illegitimate daughter on the same day. Patient showed strong aversion. The paper trembled slightly in his fingers. Further on was the year Melody transferred to an elite primary school. Mr. Rutherford had bought Melody a custom-made school bag worth £100,000, while Lisa carried an old, faded bag her mother had bought before she died. At 12, Melody's birthday party had 30 tables of guests, while Lisa was locked in the attic. At 15, Lisa got into a top high school, but Mr. Rutherford refused to pay the fees, claiming too much education is useless for girls. Her grandfather had secretly given her the money. At 18, Mr. Rutherford forcibly gave Melody the spot to study abroad that should have been Lisa's. The last page was Lisa's diagnosis report from when she was 20. Moderate depression with self-harm tendencies. Victor slammed the file shut, his chest aching so much he could barely breathe. He suddenly remembered Lisa's hysterical behavior at the Rutherford family's birthday party. At the time, he had thought she was just being unreasonable. He had even ordered her to be whipped 99 times in retaliation for Melody receiving 1 lash. Just earlier, he had been so eager to get the CCTV footage, wanting to know who had captured his heart. But now, he suddenly dreaded knowing the answer to that question. What if the person who saved the bird's nest 3 years ago wasn't Melody at all? What if that person was Lisa? If she was the girl he had fallen for at first sight, what had he done to her? He couldn't bear to think any further. The birthday celebration for the young master of the Rowe family was a spectacle that left guests in awe. The entire estate had been transformed into a medieval court, with crystal chandeliers casting dazzling light. Waiters glided through the crowd with champagne flutes, while an orchestra played elegant classical music. Almost every notable figure in Northside had arrived, all eager to catch a glimpse of the mysterious young master they'd heard so much about. Victor stood on the second-floor balcony, a cigarette between his fingers, his gaze fixed intently on the estate's entrance. When Chris appeared at the side door of the ballroom, looking travel-worn, Victor practically flew down the stairs. "You'd better brace yourself," Chris warned, hesitating as he handed over the tablet. The security footage was slightly blurry, but it clearly showed the back garden from that charity gala 3 years ago. In the corner of the garden, a girl in a white dress was on her tiptoes, carefully placing a precariously balanced bird's nest back into the treetop. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling her form, making her look like a fairy who had mistakenly wandered into the mortal realm. Victor found himself holding his breath. In the final minute of the video, the girl finally turned around. The sunlight rimmed her in gold. Wisps of hair, damp with sweat, clung to her fair cheeks. Unlike her current vibrant and striking appearance, back then she had been as pure as a clear spring. That face, now so vivacious, with a beauty mark at the corner of her eye, was unmistakably Lisa Rutherford. Bang! The phone crashed heavily to the ground. Victor stared at the screen, his heart feeling as if it were being squeezed by an invisible hand. It turned out he had mistaken the wrong person from the very beginning. Meanwhile, at the estate's entrance, Melody arrived on her father's arm, surrounded by a flock of her girlfriends. "My God, this is so extravagant," one friend exclaimed dramatically. "As expected of the young Master Rowe." Of course, another friend fawned. Why else would he make no-limit bids for Melody at the charity auction? Why else would he give such expensive gifts at her birthday party? Melody lifted her chin proudly, basking in the adulation. James was beaming, surrounded by business tycoons eager to curry favor. When had the Rutherford family, nouveau riche at best in Northside, ever received such treatment? He was clearly pleased with himself, hinting not so subtly. "You're not wrong. The young Master Rowe has indeed been showing particular favor to Melody lately. Who knows, there might be some good news announced today. Young Master Rowe has arrived." The butler's booming voice echoed through the hall. All eyes turned towards the spiral staircase. Victor descended slowly, clad in a bespoke black suit. The finely tailored fabric hugged his broad shoulders and narrow waist, while a diamond tie pin glinted coldly in the light at his collar. His features were sharp, his jawline tense, exuding the unique pressure of one born to power. Each step seemed to land directly on the hearts of those watching. Melody's eyes widened in disbelief. "Victor? How can it be you?" Her friends finally made the connection. Victor Rowe, the young master of the Rowe family? So Melody, your bodyguard was actually the young master himself? The shock on Melody's face gradually transformed into wild joy. So that's how it was. The Victor who had been by her side all this time, protecting her, was actually the young master of the Rowe family. No wonder he had made no-limit bids for her at the charity auction. No wonder he had given those priceless gifts. She trembled with excitement, already envisioning her glorious future as the madam of the Rowe family. James Rutherford was even more elated, quickly pulling his daughter forward. "Mr. Rowe, I had no idea it was you. If you wanted to experience life by working as a bodyguard for our family, you should have told us. It's all my fault for neglecting you these past few years. Please don't hold it against us." Victor gave them a cold glance, raising his hand to signal the orchestra to stop. "Thank you all for coming." His voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the entire hall. "Today, on my birthday, I have an announcement to make." Melody's heart raced, her cheeks flushing. "As you all know, I've been showing particular favor to the Rutherford family's second daughter recently." Victor paused, a sardonic smile curving his lips. "The reason I've done so is to choose a new wife for my great-uncle." The entire room erupted in shock. Melody's smile froze on her face, her voice trembling as she asked, What great-uncle?" "Victor, what are you talking about?" An elderly man with gray hair, leaning on a walking stick and supported by a butler, emerged. He looked at Melody with a grin. "Is this my future bride?" Not bad at all. This is my grandfather's cousin," Victor introduced coldly. "He's been a widower for years and wants to remarry." Melody stumbled backwards. "That's impossible." "Victor, this joke isn't funny at all." "Victor Rowe, you must be joking, right? He's old enough to be my grandfather. How dare you address the young master so casually?" A bodyguard slapped her, causing half of her face to swell instantly. James finally reacted, hurrying forward. "Mr. Rowe, there must be some misunderstanding. You clearly had feelings for Melody." Mr. Rutherford, Victor interrupted, his voice as cold as ice. My great-uncle is very fond of your daughter. If you agree to this marriage, Rowe Industries is willing to establish a long-term partnership with Rutherford Company. Mr. Rutherford's expression changed in an instant. A long-term partnership with the Rowe family. It was an opportunity that could elevate Rutherford Company to the top tier of British businesses. Dad! Melody grabbed her father's arm in terror. You won't agree, will you? I'm barely in my 20s. James hesitated for a moment, then suddenly shook off his daughter's hand. Marrying into the Rowe family is your good fortune. He turned to Victor with a sycophantic smile. Mr. Rowe, rest assured. We'll register the marriage today. They can consummate it tonight. Melody looked at her father in disbelief, her mind going blank. No. This wasn't right. This shouldn't be happening. She threw herself at Victor, crying, Victor. You're joking, aren't you? You've always loved me the most. You even said you'd give your life for me. Victor stepped back, avoiding her touch with disgust. Love? He sneered. I love the kind-hearted girl I met at the charity gala 3 years ago, not you. Melody felt as if struck by lightning. What do you mean? I mean, I mistook you for someone else. I thought I loved you, but actually, that person should have been your sister, Lisa. Victor turned away from her, addressing his bodyguards. What are you waiting for? Take her away, my great-uncle is waiting to consummate the marriage. No. No. I don't want this. Melody screamed hysterically. Victor didn't even spare her a glance, signaling the bodyguards to drag her away. The party continued, with glasses clinking. James tried several times to approach Victor, but was coldly avoided each time. As the event was ending, James finally caught Victor as he was about to leave. Mr. Rowe, about the partnership. Certainly, Victor pointed towards the car park. Mr. Rutherford, please stand 10 meters away from that black Maybach and wait for me. James Rutherford, unsuspecting, scurried over and stood as instructed. The roar of an engine filled the car park. Victor floored the accelerator, and the Maybach shot towards James like an arrow. Bang! James was sent flying several meters, crashing heavily onto the concrete, blood instantly staining the ground. Tell the doctor, Victor lowered his window and calmly instructed the approaching bodyguards to treat him within an inch of his life. The black sports car sped along the winding road, reaching speeds of 200 miles per hour. Victor's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel. It took an hour of driving before he finally calmed down. Lisa, he murmured, I've finally avenged you. He dialed his assistant. Arrange the private jet. We're going to Southside immediately. The assistant stammered, Mr. Rowe, I'm afraid it might be too late. What do you mean? Today is Miss Rutherford's wedding day with Mr. Sinclair. Victor slammed on the brakes. Wedding? What wedding? Isn't Kyle Sinclair in a vegetative state? That's what I needed to report to you. The assistant's voice trembled. Mr. Sinclair, he suddenly woke up on the first day Miss Rutherford arrived in Southside. Southside, Hilton Hotel. Lisa sat in the bridal dressing room, gazing at her elegantly dressed reflection in the mirror, still feeling dazed. She had thought she would marry a man in a vegetative state, destined to live as a widow for the rest of her life. But fate had played a cruel joke on her. On her first day at the Sinclair mansion, Kyle Sinclair woke up. At that time, she was merely standing by the bed, looking down at this man who had been asleep for years. His features were chiseled, his eyelashes casting shadows on his pale face, as still as a painting. She sighed, thinking that if he weren't lying here asleep, he would surely be a strikingly handsome man. But in the next second, Kyle Sinclair's fingers suddenly moved. She stepped back in shock, watching wide-eyed as he slowly opened his eyes, his dark pupils staring straight at her. As their eyes met, she stammered nervously, Doctor. He's awake! What happened next seemed to be on fast forward. The Sinclair family wept with joy, doctors rushed in to examine him, while she stood numbly in the corner, watching the man who should have been in a coma gradually regain consciousness. The Sinclair household was in chaos. with doctors, servants, and family elders all flooding in. After confirming that Kyle Sinclair had indeed awakened, Mrs. Sinclair knelt down on the spot, grasping Lisa's hands with tears streaming down her face. "Lisa, you're a blessing to our family." Later, when Kyle said he wanted to see her, she walked into the hospital room, assuming he wanted to discuss calling off the engagement. After all, the Rutherford had always been marrying above their social class into the Sinclairs. She never understood why the Sinclair family had agreed to this marriage in the first place. And now that he was awake, there seemed even less reason to go through with it. But before she could speak, she heard him say, "Does Miss Rutherford know why the Sinclair family agreed to this marriage?" She shook her head. It wasn't an agreement with the Rutherfords. Kyle's voice was soft but clear. It was an agreement with the Kensingtons. The Kensingtons, her mother's family. "Your mother and mine were best friends," he said, watching her slightly trembling eyelashes. "They made a pact that if they had children in the future, they would become in-laws." Lisa's throat tightened. "After your mother passed away, you didn't have a good life with the Rutherfords." Kyle slowly sat up. "The Kensingtons always wanted to take you back, but the Rutherfords wouldn't let you go. It wasn't until Mr. Rutherford proactively proposed the marriage alliance that the Kensingtons seized this opportunity to get you away from the Rutherfords. So, Miss Rutherford, whether I woke up or remained in a coma, I would never marry your sister, only you. I've been asleep for too long and need to readjust to the business world." Kyle suddenly smiled. "But I promise, I'm quite capable and will protect you for life. The Sinclair family will do the same. From now on, you can spend as much as you want, do whatever you want." He paused, his voice gentle. "Although we don't have feelings for each other yet, we can marry first and fall in love later, taking it slow. Are you willing to give it a try?" At that moment, Lisa inexplicably nodded. Click. The door of the dressing room opened, interrupting her reminiscence. Lisa came back to her senses and found Kyle standing behind her. The man wore a well-tailored black suit, his broad shoulders and narrow waist filling out the formal wear perfectly. He leaned down to place a kiss on the nape of her neck, his warm breath sending shivers down her spine. "So shy," he chuckled softly. "What will you do tonight?" Who's shy?" Her ears turned red. "I just didn't react in time. I'm very experienced, you know." "Oh." Kyle raised an eyebrow, his tone as intimate as if they had been in love for years. "Then our Lisa must be quite skilled?" Lisa's heart skipped a beat. What happened to marrying first and falling in love later? Why did this man seem so deeply in love already? "Why are you here? Isn't the ceremony not started yet?" She tried to change the subject. "I was worried you might be nervous." Kyle took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "So we're not going to enter separately. I'll walk in with you." His palm was warm and dry, strangely comforting. Standing outside the banquet hall waiting to make their entrance, Lisa suddenly felt a bit dazed. She had imagined her wedding countless times before, wearing a pristine white wedding dress, walking arm in arm with her father towards Victor Rowe. A sharp pain pricked her heart, and she took a deep breath, completely erasing that name from her mind. "Ready?" Kyle asked softly. Lisa nodded, returning a smile. The wedding march began to play, and the doors slowly opened. Hundreds of gazes turned towards them at once, and Lisa instinctively tightened her grip on Kyle's hand. "Don't be afraid," he whispered in her ear, "I'm here." The guests on both sides of the red carpet whispered among themselves. "What a perfect match. Mrs. Sinclair is so beautiful. I heard she's the one who woke Mr. Sinclair up." The Sinclairs have truly married a lucky star. From the day she arrived in Southside, the Sinclair family had been exceptionally kind to her, without any contempt or difficulty, not even a word of gossip. And now, all the guests invited by the Sinclairs were praising her, without a single mention of the Rutherfords. It must have been Kyle's special arrangement. A warmth spread through her heart. During the ring exchange, the officiant smiled and asked, "Mr. Kyle Sinclair, do you take Miss Lisa Rutherford to be your lawfully wedded wife, for richer, for poorer?" "I do," Kyle answered without hesitation. "Miss Lisa Rutherford, do you?" "She doesn't." The doors of the banquet hall burst open, and a tall figure stood silhouetted against the light. Lisa's body stiffened, and she slowly turned around. Victor stood at the entrance, his suit disheveled, the hair on his forehead damp with sweat. His chest heaved violently, as if he had run all the way here. "Lisa." His voice was hoarse beyond recognition. "Don't marry him." The guests erupted into a frenzy of whispers. "Isn't that Victor Rowe, the heir to the Rowe Empire? Did he just say don't marry him? Is he trying to stop the wedding? Goodness, Kyle has just woken up, and now this drama at the wedding." The murmurs swelled like a tide, and Lisa dug her nails into her palms, almost believing she was dreaming. How could Victor be here? She watched as he approached her step by step. His suit was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, as if he hadn't rested properly in ages. "Don't marry him," he repeated, his voice hoarse beyond recognition. Lisa's fingers trembled, but she forced herself to remain calm. "Victor, what are you doing here?" She could hear the coldness in her own voice. "Aren't you afraid your beloved Melody will be jealous?" Victor's breath caught, his eyes filled with intense pain. "I made a mistake," he said, his voice low and thick with suppressed emotions. "Lisa, it was you I loved 3 years ago, not Melody. I've been blind and foolish all these years, loving the wrong person. Do you remember the charity gala 3 years ago? When you climbed a tree to save a nest of birds? That day, I fell in love with you at first sight, but I mistook you for Melody." Lisa's pupils dilated. Of course, she remembered that day. She had worn a white dress, climbed the tree to rescue a precariously balanced bird's nest. And as she came down, she saw a man standing behind the tree in the distance. She thought he was just passing by and had hurried away. So, it was him? Seeing her stunned expression, Victor thought she didn't believe him and continued urgently. "I've uncovered everything. I know Melody has been deceiving me all these years. It was you who had a difficult time in the Rutherford family, not her. She drugged your mother, causing her to lose both her life and your unborn sibling. She's bullied you since childhood and forged a report to make you lose your scholarship abroad. I'm so sorry, I didn't investigate thoroughly, I let you suffer." With each word he spoke, Lisa's heart clenched painfully. All the past grievances and pain, laid bare so casually by him. As if a simple "I made a mistake" could erase all the hurt she had endured over the years. She suddenly laughed, but her eyes were cold. "So what? You think saying you made a mistake and didn't investigate properly can erase all the pain I've suffered these years?" Victor's Adam's apple bobbed, his voice low, almost pleading. "Lisa, I'm sorry. I'll spend a lifetime making it up to you." "Make it up?" She twisted her lips sardonically. "Victor, do you remember how you treated me for Melody's sake?" He stiffened. She spoke each word like a knife stabbing into his heart. "At the auction, you made no-limit bids for her, leaving me unable to win a single item. On Moonlight Cliff, you risked your life to pick a flower for her. You tattooed her name on your chest. And while protecting her, you let me be mauled by Mastiff. Then had me whipped 99 times in revenge." With each sentence, Victor's face grew paler. By the end, he could barely stand, clenching his fists so tightly his nails dug into his palms. "I'm sorry." His voice was hoarse, his eyes red-rimmed. "Lisa, please, give me one chance." He spoke rapidly, as if afraid of being interrupted. "I've already taken revenge on everyone who hurt you. I've dealt with Melody and your father. Melody is married to my 60-year-old great-uncle. And I broke your father's legs in a car accident." Lisa's face showed shock, but before she could speak, Kyle stepped in front of her, his face cold. "Enough. Mr. Rowe, please control yourself." The pain in Victor's eyes was instantly replaced by fury. He forced himself to calm down and turned to Kyle. "Mr. Sinclair, you've just woken up. How much feeling can you have for Lisa? Why put on this act? If you're willing to let her go, I'll give you 30% of the profits from all Rowe Group projects." The entire room fell into stunned silence. The collaboration projects between Sinclair and Rowe were worth billions in profits each. Yet Victor was willing to give them all up. Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. She knew Kyle was essentially a businessman, no one would refuse such a deal. But in the next second, Kyle let out a cold laugh. Not necessary. At the same time, the Sinclair family members stood up one after another. Mrs. Sinclair even walked directly to Lisa's side and held her hand. Lisa is our Sinclair family's daughter-in-law, not a commodity. Lisa's eyes welled up with tears, a warmth flooding her heart. Victor stared at them in disbelief, finally turning back to Lisa, pleading almost pitifully. Lisa, please, come with me? I'll spend my whole life making it up to you. Lisa closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, there was only resolution in her gaze. No. She turned to the vicar. Please continue the ceremony. The pain in Victor's eyes was instantly replaced by madness. Who dares? He shouted fiercely. His assistant quickly stepped forward and whispered. Mr. Rowe, everything is ready outside. Lisa's heart lurched as she turned sharply to Victor. What exactly are you planning to do? Victor's eyes were bloodshot, his voice low and vicious. I've planted bombs all around outside. If you don't agree to come with me, everyone in here will die together. The room fell into dead silence. Lisa felt a chill run through her body. Have you gone mad? Yes, I have. He stared at her, enunciating each word. If you marry someone else, I'll go completely insane. Victor! Her voice trembled. What do you want? Come with me. He fixed his gaze on her. Give me one chance. I don't want to. Then we'll all die together. Lisa felt like she was being driven to the brink of madness. Her fingernails digging deep into her palms. At that moment, Kyle grasped her hand, his voice calm and firm. Then we'll die together. The Sinclair family members spoke in unison, we stand together. The guests, however, panicked and began to plead on their knees. Miss Rutherford, please agree to his demands. This is your personal matter after all, don't involve us. Yes, Miss Rutherford, we're just here for a wedding, how innocent we are. Lisa bit her lip hard, finally taking a deep breath. Fine. She looked at Victor, her voice ice cold. I'll give you 1 week. From now on, you're not allowed to go crazy again. Victor's eyes instantly lit up with wild joy. Agreed. Kyle tightened his grip on her hand. Lisa! Lisa turned to him and said softly, do you trust me? I'll only be gone for a week, okay? After a long silence, Kyle chose to respect her decision and let go of her hand. Mrs. Sinclair handed her a small bag, whispering, Lisa, there are important things inside. Look at them when you have time. Lisa nodded and left with Victor. Victor was eager to take her to his private jet, but Lisa coldly stated, if you dare take me away from Southside, I'll die right here, and you can blow everyone up. Victor had to concede. All right, we won't leave. You like Southside, so we'll stay here. He made a phone call and had the most expensive mansion in Southside prepared. When Lisa walked into the villa, she froze in place. The layout of the villa was identical to her home before her mother passed away. Victor embraced her from behind and asked softly, do you like it? Lisa laughed coldly. I remember, this is how you used to please Melody, isn't it? Made no-limit bids for her, getting tattoos for her. And even when she was hit once, you had me whipped 99 times. Victor felt a sharp pain in his heart and held her tighter. Lisa, I will make amends. Lisa refused to believe his words. Make amends? Those wounds had already been carved into her bones and blood. How could they possibly be mended? She turned and entered her room, slamming the door shut. She only came out when Victor knocked and called her for dinner. As she opened the door, she was slightly taken aback. Victor was wearing an apron, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing his well-defined forearms. The dining table was set with several dishes, all looking and smelling delicious, and all her favorites. You made these? She raised an eyebrow. Yes, he said softly. I didn't want anyone else to disturb us. Lisa scoffed. Did you learn to cook for Melody? Victor's fingers tensed, pain flashing in his eyes. Lisa, please, can we not mention her anymore? But she insisted on bringing her up. At the dinner table, she kept jabbing at him. Melody likes sweet things, doesn't she? Did you often cook for her before? When you went to Moonlight Cliff to pick flowers for her, did you ever think you might not make it back alive? When she saw you had tattooed her name on your chest, did she cry with emotion? Each sentence was like a knife stabbing into Victor's heart. He went from initial pain to silence, and finally to numbly listening, without even the strength to argue back. Lisa, however, felt a sense of satisfaction. After finishing dinner, as she was about to return to her room, Victor suddenly called out to her. "Lisa." He handed her a whip. Lisa froze. "What does this mean?" 99 lashes, he said, his voice hoarse. "I owe you this." She stared at him, sneering. "You think this will make up for everything?" "It's not about making amends." He looked up, his eyes dark. "It's what I owe you." He took out a document from his pocket and handed it to her. "I've already written my will. Even if you beat me to death, the Rowe family won't trouble you. All of the Rowe family's assets will be left to you." Lisa's fingertips trembled slightly, then she sneered again. "You think I'm a little girl? Easily fooled by a few words?" Victor looked at her, his voice barely audible. "I'm telling the truth." Before he could finish, crack! A lash whipped viciously across his back. Victor let out a muffled groan, his back straightening, but he endured it without making a sound. Lisa didn't hold back. The second lash, the third lash. The sound of the whip cutting through the air was particularly harsh in the quiet flat, accompanied by the sound of flesh tearing and the smell of blood permeating the air. Victor remained standing, his back straight, not even flinching once. By the time the 99th lash fell, his back was a mess of blood and torn flesh. Blood dripped from the hem of his shirt onto the floor, a shocking sight. He finally staggered, but still forced himself to stand steady, reaching out to grab Lisa's hand. Lisa coldly watched him. "What? Regretting it now? Want to hit me back?" Victor shook his head, gently rubbing her wrist with his fingertips, his voice weak. "Does your hand hurt?" Lisa was stunned. Then, she violently pulled her hand away, sneering. "Victor Rowe, how pathetic can you be?" He tugged at the corners of his mouth, managing a pale smile. "As long as you're happy, you can say anything about me." His gentleness was unbearable to her. Lisa turned to leave, but was called back by him again. "One more thing." He handed her a knife. Lisa frowned. "What are you up to now?" Victor raised his hand, tearing open his blood-soaked shirt, revealing the glaring tattoo on his chest. "Melody." "Cut it out," he said hoarsely. Lisa sneered. "What, don't want to keep her name anymore?" Before she could finish, Victor suddenly gripped her hand, violently plunging the knife tip into his own chest. Squelch! Blood instantly gushed out. Lisa's pupils constricted, instinctively trying to pull her hand away. But he held it firmly in place. "Don't move." He was in so much pain that the veins on his forehead bulged. But he still forced himself to continue, guiding her hand to slowly carve out that piece of flesh. Blood flowed down his chest, staining his trouser legs red, and also staining her hand. Lisa's fingertips trembled, her breath almost stopping. But Victor seemed to feel no pain, and after clearing away the flesh, he gripped her hand again, carving a new name into his chest, stroke by stroke. Lisa. By the time the last cut was made, he could barely stand. But he still forced himself to look at her, his lips curling into a smile. "Lisa." His voice was as light as a sigh. "I love you." With that, he finally passed out, collapsing heavily onto the floor. Blood spread beneath him, like a blooming spider lily. Lisa stood rooted to the spot, the knife clattering to the floor from her hand. She looked at the blood all over the floor, and suddenly realized. The cruelest revenge in this world wasn't hatred, but him willingly carving out his heart for her, while she could no longer bring herself to trust. Victor had a dream. In his dream, he was in the back garden of a charity gala, basking in perfect sunlight. Instead of making that phone call, he stood under a tree, watching a young woman in a white dress carefully placing a bird's nest back onto a branch. She gracefully jumped down, dusting off her skirt. And as she looked up, their eyes met. He walked towards her, his voice low and gentle. "Hello, I'm Victor Rowe. I'd like to get to know you." The young woman blinked, tilting her chin up proudly. "Oh? Why is that?" "Because you're beautiful," he chuckled softly. She huffed, though the tips of her ears turned pink. "Well, since you're so fond of me, I suppose I could grace you with the opportunity to know this lady." He suppressed a laugh, finding her utterly adorable. In the dream, their story unfolded naturally. He pursued her, she reluctantly agreed. During their courtship he spoiled her endlessly. She nestled in his arms acting coy and playful. And finally, they walked down the aisle, exchanging rings amidst everyone's blessings. He leaned down to kiss her, and she whispered with a blush, "Victor, you must be good to me forever." "I will," he smiled, promising, "forever." "Mr. Rowe?" "Mr. Rowe!" The doctor's call yanked him out of his dream. Victor's eyes snapped open, greeted by the stark white ceiling. The pain in his back and chest a harsh reminder of reality. No wedding, no love, only a landscape of wounds and hurt. "Where's Miss Rutherford?" he asked hoarsely. "In the garden," the doctor replied. Victor ignored the protests and struggled out of bed, stumbling towards the garden. Sunlight dappled the flower beds, and Lisa stood there, her fingertips gently caressing a rose, her profile breathtakingly beautiful in the light. He was about to approach when he heard her soft laugh into her phone. "Yes, I miss you too." Victor's blood froze instantly. Her tone carried a hint of shyness and playfulness, a softness he had never heard before. "Hubby," she called tenderly. This word stabbed into Victor's heart like a knife. He rushed forward, grabbing her wrist. "What are you doing?" Lisa was startled but quickly regained her composure, raising an eyebrow at him. "Talking to my hubby, what of it?" "Don't call him that." His voice was hoarse, his eyes bloodshot. "I'll call him whatever I like," Lisa sneered. "Hubby, hubby, hubby." With each word, Victor's face grew paler. Finally, his eyes reddened, his voice trembling. "Lisa, please don't do this to me." Lisa was taken aback. She had never seen Victor like this before. Humble, in pain, as if she had shattered all his pride with her own hands. "I suppose it's karma." He tugged at the corner of his mouth, his smile more painful than tears. "You can kill me if you want, just don't do this to me." Lisa's throat tightened, but before she could speak, Victor had already composed himself, saying softly, "I'm sorry I wasn't with you last night." He paused, taking her hand. "I've prepared a surprise for you today." As night fell, Victor took her to an outdoor viewing platform. Lisa thought it might be some kind of performance, until the host's voice boomed excitedly. "Tonight's special event. Mr. Victor Rowe versus the Tibetan Mastiff Shadow." Lisa jumped to her feet. "Are you mad?" But Victor just smiled gently. "The injuries you once suffered, I'll repay 100-fold." The iron cage opened, and the massive Tibetan Mastiff charged out with a roar. Victor met it barehanded, instantly knocked to the ground. "Victor!" Lisa cried out involuntarily. The Mastiff's sharp teeth tore into his arm, blood gushing forth. Yet Victor only grunted, swinging back with a punch to the dog's eye. The crowd gasped in shock. The fight was breathtakingly intense. Each lunge of the Mastiff a deadly threat. Victor covered in blood but never backing down. Finally, he gripped the Mastiff's throat with his bare hands. And to everyone's horror, choked the life out of it. The arena fell silent. Victor staggered to his feet, his body a bloody mess. Yet he walked step by step towards Lisa, then knelt before her, as if in submission. "It bit me 10 times, he looked up at her, his voice hoarse. 10 times repaid. "Lisa, can you forgive me now?" Lisa's fingers trembled. "You've truly gone mad." But Victor smiled. He took her hand, pressing it to his bloodied face, his gaze obsessive yet tender. "I have gone mad, long ago. Lisa, only you can cure me." For the next 3 days, Victor used up all the romance he had ever possessed in his life. On the first day, he took her to the highest Ferris wheel in Northside. They say couples who kiss at the top will stay together forever. he said, standing at the cabin door with a hint of cautious anticipation in his eyes. Lisa sneered. Then we should kiss at the bottom, so we'll never see each other in the next life. The light in Victor's eyes dimmed, but he still forced a smile. It's all right, I just wanted to show you the night view. As the Ferris wheel reached its peak, the lights of the entire city spread out before them. Victor suddenly got down on one knee and took out a diamond ring from his pocket. Lisa, his voice was hoarse, if we could start over. There are no ifs, she interrupted, turning to look out the window. On the second day, he personally prepared a full Christmas dinner. I remember you like spicy food, he said, placing a piece of spicy fish onto her plate, his gaze tender. Try it? Lisa glanced at it. Melody doesn't eat spicy food, so you never made these before, did you? Victor's hand froze in midair. She dumped all the food into the bin right in front of him. On the third day, he took her to the seaside. As night fell, drones formed her smiling face in the sky, and fireworks spelled out Lisa, I love you. Do you like it? He asked softly. Looking at the dazzling sky, Lisa suddenly smiled. Victor, did you pursue Melody like this back then? He clenched his fists tightly, his throat constricting. No. Only you, his voice was barely audible. All of this, it's only for you. Lisa remained unmoved. Back in her room, Lisa thought about tomorrow being the last day and wanted to pack her things. She accidentally opened the bag Mrs. Sinclair had given her. Inside was a manila envelope, its edges slightly yellowed, as if it had been handled many times. She hesitated before opening it, and a stack of letters slipped out. Each one began with Dear Lisa. The first let. Lisa. I saw you for the first time today at the Kensington family's party. You were wearing a white dress, standing in the garden feeding a cat. Even though it was so lively around, you seemed to be in your own quiet world. I watched you for a long time from the second floor, until you noticed me and smiled. At that moment, I knew I was done for. Kyle. The second letter. Lisa. I heard that Rutherford's illegitimate daughter was causing you trouble again. I had the butler send you some medicine on behalf of the Sinclair family. I wonder if you've used it. Actually, I wanted to come see you myself, but I couldn't find a suitable reason. Kyle. The third letter. Lisa. Today is your 18th birthday, and also the anniversary of your mother's passing. I flew to Northside and waited outside the cemetery all day, watching you cry alone in front of the tombstone. I left your favorite blueberry cake at the gate, hoping you would have a bite. Kyle. The last letter. Lisa. Your father came to propose a marriage, hoping for an engagement between the Sinclair and Rutherford families. I know he wants his second daughter to marry into our family. It's a trap, but I agreed anyway. Because it's the only way I can marry you. If you're reading this letter, it means we're already married. Please don't be afraid of this marriage. I'm not marrying you out of pity. From the first time I saw you at 16, I've been waiting for this day. Kyle. The letter slipped from Lisa's hand. She remembered the way Kyle looked at her after he woke up. That restrained yet profound gaze wasn't the politeness of a stranger, but love buried for years. On the morning of the fourth day, she stood in the living room, calmly looking at him. The 7 days are up. I'm leaving. Victor's hand paused as he was brewing coffee. I did say I'd let you go. He turned around, his eyes dark. But on the condition that you make a choice, either go to Kyle Sinclair or stay with me. Lisa laughed coldly. I choose to go. Before she could finish, Victor suddenly pulled out a revolver and pressed it against his own temple. 2 choices, his voice was terrifyingly calm. You stay, or you leave. This gun has 4 bullets, 3 blanks, and 1 live round. He cocked the hammer. From now on, for every word you say, I'll pull the trigger. The implication was clear, only if she said I will stay would he not die. If she said anything about leaving, he would certainly die. Lisa's pupils constricted. Are you mad? Using your life to threaten me? No, he smiled lightly. I'm just gambling. Gambling on whether you care about me at all. She stared at him intently, her chest heaving violently. Victor, she gritted her teeth, Don't force me to hate you. Then hate me. His gaze was obsessive yet tender. At least it's better than forgetting me. After a long silence, Lisa took a deep breath. Bang! The first shot, a blank. Victor didn't even blink. Bang! The second shot, still a blank. Cold sweat had formed on his forehead, but he still smiled at her. Continue. Lisa's fingertips trembled, but her voice was terrifyingly calm. 2. Bang! The third shot, a blank. Leave! The fourth shot. Bang! Blood instantly gushed from Victor's chest. He staggered back a few steps and fell heavily to the ground, still smiling. Lisa! His mouth full of blood, his voice as soft as a sigh, "You're so cruel." Lisa stood rooted to the spot, her nails digging deep into her palms. She watched as his blood spread across the floor, as his pupils gradually dilated, as the paramedics rushed in to carry him away. Throughout, she never looked back. 1 month later, in Southside, Kyle held a grand wedding for her. White wedding dress, vibrant roses, everyone's blessings. The vicar asked, "Miss Lisa Rutherford, do you take Mr. Kyle Sinclair to be your lawfully wedded husband, for better, for worse?" Looking at the gentleman before her, she softly said, "I do." As they exchanged rings, Kyle suddenly whispered, "His condition isn't good." Lisa's fingers trembled. The doctor said the bullet was only a centimeter from his heart. It's a miracle he survived. Kyle looked at her intently. But he might never wake up. Lisa was silent for a long time, then finally smiled. "Let's not talk about him." She stood on tiptoe and kissed Kyle's lips. "For the rest of our lives, Mr. Sinclair, please take care of me." Kyle gently kissed her back. "Mrs. Sinclair, I will." Late that night after the wedding, Lisa stood alone on the balcony. Moonlight shone on the diamond ring on her ring finger, sparkling brilliantly. She suddenly remembered, long ago, that bodyguard who always followed her with a cold face. She remembered the knife he took for her, the warmth of his back as he carried her home in the rain, the look in his eyes when he finally said, "Lisa, I'll love you with my life." And she remembered how he lay in a pool of blood, smiling as he called her cruel. The night breeze dispersed the moisture in the corner of her eye. She said softly, "Goodbye, Victor. We'll never meet again."